Scheming witch! You turned him against us! Victoria's manicured fist slammed onto the mahogany conference table, making the crystal water pitcher jump. The lawyer, Mr. Brennan, didn't even flinch as he adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and continued reading. To my beloved wife, Margaret, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, business holdings, and financial accounts, totaling $8.2 million. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the antique clock ticking in the corner of the law office, each second marking another moment of their stunned disbelief. My 3 children sat frozen, their mouths hanging open like fish, gasping for air. That's when Robert, my eldest, stood up so violently his chair toppled backward. "This is impossible. Dad would never—" His face had turned the color of raw beef, veins bulging at his temples. "Mother, what did you do?" "What did I do?" I'll tell you exactly what I did and what they did that brought us to this moment where a 62-year-old widow sat watching her own children realize their carefully orchestrated betrayal had spectacularly backfired. My name is Margaret Whitfield, and until 8 months ago, I thought I had the perfect family. Harold and I had been married for 40 years, built a successful furniture restoration business from nothing, raised 3 children in a beautiful colonial home in Wilmington. We weren't just husband and wife. We were partners in everything. Every morning for 4 decades, Harold would bring me coffee in bed, kiss my forehead, and say, "Another day of adventure with you, Maggie." The morning he died, the coffee sat cooling on the nightstand while paramedics worked on him on our bedroom floor. "Massive heart attack," they said. No warning. Just gone between one heartbeat and the next. I held his hand as it went cold, whispering that I loved him, hoping somehow he could still hear me. The funeral was beautiful. Robert gave a touching eulogy about his father's integrity. Patricia read a poem about love enduring beyond death. Michael played Harold's favorite hymn on the piano. They held me as I sobbed, promised they'd take care of me, swore we'd get through this together as a family. That performance lasted exactly 3 days. The first sign something was wrong came when Robert showed up with a briefcase full of papers. "Mom, you're in no state to deal with the business right now," he said, pushing documents across my kitchen table. "Just sign these so I can keep things running while you grieve." I was still in such a fog of loss that I almost did it. But Harold's voice seemed to whisper in my ear, the same thing he'd always said when signing contracts. "Read everything twice, Maggie. The devil's in the details." The papers would have given Robert complete control of our business, the one Harold and I built with our own hands. When I said I needed time to review them with a lawyer, Robert's caring demeanor cracked just slightly. "Don't you trust me, Mom?" "I'm trying to help you." But that crack was enough to make me wonder what else might be hidden beneath the surface. Patricia came next, all sweetness and concern. "Mom, this big house is too much for you now. Why don't you move into the guest cottage? It's cozy, easier to maintain. Michael and Victoria need a proper place for the kids anyway." The guest cottage, 700 square feet at the back of the property, where we used to store lawn equipment. She wanted to move me out of the home I'd lived in for 35 years and give it to my youngest son and his wife. "I'm fine where I am," I told her. Her smile tightened. "Well, we'll see. Sometimes these decisions get made for us." What I discovered next left me speechless. 2 weeks later, I overheard Victoria on the phone in my own living room. She'd let herself in while I was gardening. "The Caribbean cruise is booked for all of us." Yes, Robert already put down the deposit." "No, we're not telling Margaret." "Why would we? It's a family trip for people who actually matter." A family trip. My own children and their spouses were planning a vacation to the Caribbean and deliberately excluding me. Harold's life insurance had barely been processed, and they were already spending money on luxury cruises where I wasn't welcome. I stood in my own backyard, covered in soil from planting Harold's favorite roses, and felt something inside me shift. Grief transformed into something sharper, more focused. They wanted to push me aside? Fine, but I was going to find out exactly what they were planning. That evening, I called Harold's brother George. He'd always been straight with me. "George, have my children been in contact with you since the funeral?" The long pause told me everything. "Maggie, I don't want to get in the middle of family business. Please, I need to know." He sighed heavily. "They've been having meetings about the estate, the business. Robert says you're not mentally capable anymore, that Harold would want them to take control. They asked me to sign an affidavit saying you've been showing signs of dementia." Dementia. I was 62 years old, sharp as a tack. Still did the Sunday crossword in pen, but they needed me, incompetent, to take everything Harold and I had built. "Did you sign it?" "Hell no. Told them they should be ashamed of themselves. Haven't heard from them since." That's when I realized this wasn't just greed, and this was a coordinated attack. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. The next morning, I installed security cameras throughout the house, tiny ones that look like smoke detectors. I told no one. Within a week, I had footage of Victoria going through my jewelry box, pocketing my mother's pearl necklace and Harold's father's pocket watch. I had video of Robert and Harold's study, photographing financial documents. I recorded Patricia measuring rooms and discussing with a realtor friend how much the old lady's house would sell for. But the worst betrayal came from the papers I found hidden in Robert's briefcase when he left it in my living room during a visit. Forged power of attorney documents with my signature, except I'd never signed them. Bank statements showing withdrawals from the business account, money flowing into Robert's personal accounts. He'd been embezzling for months, maybe longer. Harold must have known. Oh, God. Harold must have discovered what they were doing. I hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent named Dorothy Chen, who specialized in financial crimes. What she uncovered made my blood run cold. The embezzlement went back 2 years. Robert had stolen over $300,000. Patricia had convinced vulnerable elderly clients to change their furniture restoration contracts, redirecting valuable pieces to her own antique dealing side business. Michael and Victoria had been selling items from our warehouse through online auctions, pocketing the profits. "Your husband found out 3 weeks before he died," Dorothy told me, sliding a folder across her desk. "He hired me first. These are copies of everything he collected. He was planning to confront them, but the heart attack, the stress of discovering his own children were thieves, were plotting against their own parents. It must have been unbearable. They might not have pulled the trigger, but they'd loaded the gun that killed him." Inside the folder was a note in Harold's handwriting. "Maggie, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. They're not the children we raised. Don't let them destroy what we built. Be strong, my love. One more adventure. Make them face justice. All my love, H." I sat in Dorothy's office and cried for the last time. When I was done, I dried my eyes and got to work. The family meeting they called 2 weeks later was their attempt at a final push. They gathered in my living room that Patricia had already been mentally redecorating, with somber faces and rehearsed speeches. "Mom," Robert began, using his businessman voice, "we're concerned about your mental state. You've been acting erratically, making wild accusations. We think it's best if you sign over power of attorney to us, for your own good." "You're not well, Mom," Patricia added, reaching for my hand. I pulled away. "We've spoken to doctors about facilities that specialize in memory care." Memory care. They wanted to lock me away in a nursing home while they divided up everything like vultures over a carcass. Victoria couldn't help but smirk. "It's what's best for everyone, Margaret. You'll be taken care of, and the family assets will be properly managed." I stood up slowly, my knees creaking slightly. Age comes for us all, but my mind was sharp as ever. I need time to think about this. There's no time, Michael said quickly, too quickly. The documents need to be signed today. Why? What's the rush? They exchanged glances. Robert cleared his throat. Dad's will is being read next week. We need everything in order before then. Ah, there it was. They thought they were in the will, thought they'd inherit everything, but they wanted power of attorney first, just in case. They wanted to make sure I couldn't fight whatever they'd planned. I'll see you at the reading, I said simply, and walked to the door, opening it. Please leave my home. Mom, be reasonable. Robert started. Leave, now, or I call the police. They left, but not without Victoria, hissing in my ear. You're making a huge mistake, old woman. The mistake was theirs. The night before the will reading, I couldn't sleep. I walked through my house, touching pictures of better times. Robert's college graduation, Patricia's wedding, Michael's first child being born. When had my babies become these strangers? When had greed replaced love? Harold's presence felt strong in his study. I sat in his leather chair, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne that still lingered. Give me strength tomorrow, my love, I whispered to the darkness. One more adventure, just like you asked. The law offices of Brennan, Sterling, and Associates occupied the top floor of the most prestigious building in downtown Wilmington. The elevator ride felt like ascending to Judgment Day. I arrived 30 minutes early, wearing the black dress Harold had loved, the one he said made me look like Grace Kelly. Mr. Brennan, Harold's lawyer for 20 years, greeted me with knowing eyes. Are you ready for this, Margaret? I've been ready since the day they started planning my disposal. He squeezed my shoulder gently. Harold would be proud. My children arrived together, a united front of false confidence. Robert wore his most expensive suit. Patricia had her hair freshly styled. Michael and Victoria looked like they were attending a celebration. In a way, I suppose they thought they were. They barely acknowledged me, taking seats across the conference table like opposing counsel. Victoria whispered something to Michael that made him chuckle. Patricia was already eyeing the oil paintings on the walls, probably calculating their value. Mr. Brennan entered with his assistant, who carried a sealed envelope and a laptop. The room fell silent. Before we begin, Mr. Brennan said, I need to inform you that Harold updated his will 3 weeks before his passing. This version supersedes all previous documents. The first crack in their armor. Robert's face paled. Updated? Why weren't we informed? There was no legal requirement to inform you, Mr. Brennan replied smoothly. Now, shall we begin? He broke the seal on the envelope with ceremonial precision. I, Harold James Whitfield, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. Standard language followed, but I watched my children lean forward, eager, hungry. To my brother George, I leave my collection of first edition books and the sum of $50,000 with gratitude for his unwavering honesty. A nice bequest, but my children remained unconcerned. The real money was coming. To the Wilmington Foundation for the Arts, I leave $200,000 to be used for youth programs. Patricia's eye twitched. That was money she'd already mentally spent. To my children, Robert, Patricia, and Michael, I leave the following message. Mr. Brennan opened the laptop and turned it toward us. Harold's face appeared on the screen, thin and tired, but his eyes blazing with the righteous anger I'd only seen a few times in our marriage. My dear children, Harold's recorded voice filled the room. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone and you're about to learn the consequences of your actions. I know about the embezzlement, Robert. $347,000 stolen from the company your mother and I bled to build. I know about the furniture fraud, Patricia. 17 elderly clients deceived, priceless heirlooms stolen, Michael. I know about the warehouse thefts, the online auctions, the lies. My children sat frozen, their faces draining of all color. Harold continued, but worse than the theft was what you planned to do to your mother, declaring her incompetent, planning to lock her away, celebrating my death with Caribbean cruises while plotting to steal her home. You're not the children we raised. You're strangers who wear their faces. Victoria started to stand, but Michael pulled her back down. Therefore, I leave you each exactly $1, the minimum required to prevent you from contesting this will on grounds of omission. May it be a reminder of what your greed has cost you. The screen went dark. The silence was deafening. Mr. Brennan continued reading. To my beloved wife, Margaret, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, business holdings, and financial accounts, totaling $8.2 million. That's when Victoria exploded with her accusation of me being a scheming witch. That's when Robert knocked over his chair. That's when Patricia started sobbing, not from grief, but from rage. This won't stand, Robert shouted. We'll contest it. She manipulated him. She turned him against us. I'd advise against that, Mr. Brennan said calmly. He pulled out another folder. Mrs. Whitfield has provided us with extensive documentation of your criminal activities. Embezzlement, fraud, elder abuse, attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, though, of course, Mrs. Whitfield is anything but vulnerable. As if on cue, the conference room door opened. 2 police officers entered, accompanied by Dorothy, my private investigator. Robert Whitfield, the senior officer said, you're under arrest for embezzlement and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. The handcuffs clicking around Robert's wrists sounded like justice. He looked at me with such hatred, but beneath it, I saw the flicker of the little boy who used to run to me with skinned knees. When had I lost him? Patricia and Michael Whitfield, Victoria Whitfield, the second officer continued, you're being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. Victoria screamed, actually screamed like a toddler being denied a toy. This is insane. She's old. She's nobody. That money belongs to us. No, I said, standing up, my voice steady and clear. That money belongs to the woman who spent 40 years building a business with her bare hands. It belongs to the woman who gave up her career to raise you. It belongs to the woman you tried to throw away like garbage. Michael finally spoke, his voice breaking. Mom, please. We're your children. Don't do this. You stopped being my children the day you started planning my removal. My children had compassion. My children had integrity. You're just criminals who happen to share my DNA. As they were led away, Patricia sobbing, Robert stone-faced, Michael pleading, Victoria spewing venom, I felt nothing but calm. Harold had asked me to be strong, to have one more adventure. Mission accomplished, my love. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Robert's professional license was revoked. The embezzlement charges carried a 5-year prison sentence. His wife filed for divorce before the trial even began, taking their children and moving to Oregon. She sent me a letter apologizing, saying she'd suspected but had been too afraid to speak up. Patricia's husband discovered the extent of her deception when the charges were filed. He'd thought she was visiting elderly clients out of kindness, not casing their homes for valuables. Their divorce was finalized in 3 months. She lost her antique dealing license and faced 2 years probation and massive fines. Michael and Victoria's house of cards collapsed spectacularly. The mansion they'd been living in mortgaged to the hilt based on their expected inheritance, went into foreclosure. Victoria's social media influencer career imploded when the arrest records went public. Widow robber became a trending hashtag. They moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town, the same neighborhood they used to mock. But the universe wasn't done with Victoria yet. 3 months after the arrests, she was caught shoplifting from a department store. Designer handbags she could no longer afford. The security footage showed her stuffing a purse worth more than their monthly rent into her coat. It made the local news. The headline read, "Disgraced daughter-in-law can't kick theft habit." I didn't celebrate their downfall. There's no joy in watching your children destroy themselves, even when they've betrayed you so completely. But there was satisfaction in justice, in knowing Harold could rest peacefully. I reclaimed the family business, bringing George in as a partner. We donated the embezzled money, once recovered, to a fund for elderly fraud victims. The warehouse thrived under honest management, and we expanded to 3 new locations. I kept Harold's office exactly as he left it, except for one addition. A photo from our wedding day, when life was simpler and our children were still just dreams of the future. 6 months after the will reading, I received a letter from Patricia. She begged for forgiveness, claimed she'd been influenced by Robert, swore she'd changed. I wrote back with 2 words: prove it. I haven't heard from her since. Michael sends Christmas cards, generic ones from the dollar store, signed just Michael. Victoria's name conspicuously absent. I heard they separated, though not divorced. Too expensive, probably. Robert serves his time in minimum security. He's due for parole next year. George visited him once and said he looked older, humbled. He asked about me. George told him I was thriving. Robert cried. My sister Eleanor, who I'd barely spoken to in years because my children told me she was toxic and jealous of our success, came back into my life. Turns out they'd been poisoning that relationship too, telling her I thought I was too good for her. We spent a week in the Caribbean, the same resort my children had booked for their victory cruise. We laughed until we cried, 2 old women sipping pina coladas and watching the sunset. "They never deserved you, Maggie," Eleanor said one evening as waves lapped at our feet. "They deserved the mother I was," I replied. "They just chose to become people who didn't value that." The house feels different now, quieter but not empty. I filled it with life again. Book clubs, charity meetings, gardening groups. The guest cottage where Patricia wanted to exile me. I converted it into a studio where I teach furniture restoration to young people aging out of foster care, giving them a trade and a chance Harold would have loved. Last week, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Mrs. Patterson, one of Patricia's elderly victims. She hugged me with tears in her eyes. "You saved us all, Margaret. You stood up to them when we couldn't." I hadn't saved anyone. I just refused to be erased. That's the thing about respect. You can't demand it through force or manipulation. You can't steal it or forge it like a signature. It has to be earned through actions, through integrity, through the choices you make when you think no one's watching. My children forgot that. They thought aging made me weak, that widowhood made me vulnerable, that love made me blind. They were wrong on all counts. Harold used to say that the true measure of a person isn't how they treat their equals, but how they treat those they perceive as beneath them. My children saw me as beneath them the moment Harold's heart stopped beating. They revealed exactly who they were, and the universe responded accordingly. I'm 62 years old. I've buried the love of my life, watched my children become strangers, and rebuilt my world from ashes they tried to scatter. Some might say I'm bitter. I prefer to think of myself as educated. I've learned that blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, that greed can poison any relationship, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable those who would destroy you. But I've also learned that resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about choosing how you rebuild after you break. That justice, while sometimes slow, usually finds its way. That a woman of any age has the right to dignity, respect, and the life she's earned through decades of sacrifice and hard work. The will reading was a year ago today. This morning, I visited Harold's grave, bringing his favorite flowers, yellow roses for friendship, red for love, white for new beginnings. I told him about the business thriving, about the young people learning restoration, about Eleanor and I planning a trip to Italy next spring. I told him I missed him every day, but that I was okay. More than okay, I was living. As I stood to leave, a cardinal landed on his headstone. Harold always said cardinals were visitors from heaven. It chirped once, tilted its head at me, then flew away into the bright morning sun. "One more adventure," I whispered to the wind, "just like you asked." To anyone listening to my story, remember this. Never let anyone make you feel invisible because of your age. Never let family manipulate you with guilt when their actions show no love. Never be afraid to stand up for yourself, even if you're standing alone. The people who truly love you won't try to diminish you. They'll celebrate your strength, honor your sacrifices, and respect your journey. And if someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. It'll save you from learning the hard way, like I did, that sometimes the greatest threats come from those who should protect us most. My name is Margaret Whitfield. I'm a widow, a mother, a businesswoman, and a survivor. I'm 62 years old, and I'm just getting started. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts below. I read every comment, and I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family, betrayal, or finding strength in unexpected places. Remember, your age is your power, not your weakness. Your wisdom is your weapon, not your vulnerability. And your dignity, that's something no one can take unless you hand it over. And trust me, after everything I've been through, I'm never handing over anything again.